Once upon a time, I had just received a fabulous job offer. It was like the best ever, a dream come true. And I told a dear friend about it, a Roman Catholic sister, whose habit of mind was always to penetrate to the heart of any matter. That's what I liked about her laser-like ability to see into the essence of things. I had therefore fully expected her to discern with me that I was really on track with this job offer. But lo and behold, she did not see it that way, and unleashed upon me the fullness of her discriminating powers. She asked a completely disarming question. What's the shadow side of your adventure? Shadow side? Shadow side? Like, I had not heard that phrase before, and I didn't want to. I gulped and inwardly thought, what do you mean shadow side? Like, why the suggestion of menacing shadows? Like, why the negativity? Why so unhopeful? Why so pessimistic? What about, like, isn't it appropriate at this moment? I've just received the best job offer ever to say, like, way to go, Al. Good on you, mate. Come on, sister. Well, what kind of friend is it who challenges you to look at the worst thing about an exciting job offer? Well, it's the best kind of friend, I was later able to affirm, the kind of friend who wants you to look squarely at every aspect of something, lest you walk in unaware. It's the best kind of friend who encourages you to keep looking, to keep observing without flinching, and it may not be your best friend who too quickly starts pouring the champagne. But all I was thinking at the time was, this is the best job ever, and I thought, how could there be a shadow side to something so good? And in particular, that job offer really stood out because it was like the answer to my hopes and prayers. It just seemed to be the fulfillment of what I'd been looking for. But it was this very certainty the sister was discerning that was the problem. What she was onto is that I was too much basking in the light and not wanting to think about lions and tigers and bears. And so to shake me a little, this sister, already highly intuitive, but as well trained in Jungian psychology, was imploring me to look at the dark side of the venture. Her point was to suggest that there's always a dark side. There's always a shadow side, which is to say there's always something that you'd rather not notice, something you'd rather not be aware of. Since as the sister was picking up, again I repeat, my desire was for light only. I was therefore lost in that light. I was blinded by that light. My very sense of light was blocking me from noticing the dark side of the alluring prospect. My choice, therefore, at the time to ignore her advice and to remain stubbornly in the light by answering yes to the job prospect ensured that I would walk straight into the darkest of pits. And it took a while to dig out. And yet my experience in that dark pit has served to create a bigger theology and a greater psychology. For it's become clear to me that any way of thinking that excludes the darkness is not only incomplete, but it's dangerous. For as I would put it now, you can't insist upon summer all year long. Such a stance will blind you and paralyze you. Like, maybe not right away, but eventually you're going to come tumbling down. You will surely fall if you try to live only in the light of Easter without also acknowledging and embracing the darkness of Lent. So, like, however great your experience of the light, you must be aware that a capacity for darkness remains. So in light of this experience, and others too, I've become allergic. Like, I'm allergic to excessively positive and hopeful claims from overly sunny people. I don't believe for a moment those who claim they've overcome the darkness with the light. I'm very suspicious of those who imagine that in them no darkness remains. It's because I've been in their state of denial, and I don't want to go there again. I'm wary of people who are a little too sunny and smiley and who are quick to announce that it's all good. For it's never all good in this life. I mean, if you think so, you're lying to yourself, or you've overdosed on your medication again. So I cringe a little when somebody says it's all good, which means I tend to do a fair bit of cringing, since many people's favorite saying these days seems to be, it's all good. It's all good, they say. My question, is it? Is it all good? Well, in one sense, I'll give a qualified yes, if you make reference to it being all good in an ultimate sense, as Julian of Norwich once declared that finally all shall be well and all manner of things shall be well. Okay, fine. That's a higher perspective. But for now, in this moment, all good? I don't think so. Sorry about that. Like, wake up. It's only all good if you're not quite living on the planet, like just hovering above the planet somewhere. So as you say, for example, it's all good, you're probably not thinking about the parents of the young man who received one by one their son's chopped off fingers in the mail from ISIS. Before you say again, it's all good, you might pause for a moment to contemplate the severed fingers of your son arriving in the mail. You might, in other words, wake up and shake yourself a little. It's not all good. So the lesson here is to challenge yourself to be aware that the sunny script that you're following requires a certain delicate balancing act with a darker script, which means that on the one hand, even if you found in your life like the best script ever to live by, you must, on the other hand, simultaneously imagine a contradicting counter script. No matter how great your dream, your best laid plan, you need to be aware as well of possible nightmare scenarios. So wisely determine to put as much energy into imagining the worst as the best. But as Carl Jung warns, we don't want to think the worst. We don't want to consider contradicting counterscripts or nightmarish dimensions. It's too frightening a thought, says Jung, that man has a shadow side to him, and thus he becomes peppy and cheery to cover it over. Jung's warning is to say that the cover-up never works. You're never going to be able to dispense with the darkness. It's too powerful a force. In Jung's graphic words, the shadow remains as a positively demonic dynamism. So if ignored, this darkness will build up and explode. It does not take kindly to being ignored. But you, sweet thing, don't think so. You don't see that inside of you. No monster lurks within you, which is precisely your delusion, that you can live in Sunnyville while ignoring Darkville. Now, a better way, a higher way, was demonstrated by the leadership of James Burke, the chief executive officer of Johnson & Johnson, like the makers of Tylenol. It's apparent that he'd been worrying about how the company would respond if something went wrong. Like, this is a good leader. He was, in terms of this article, exploring the shadow side or the dark side of the company. So it was in 1979 that he got his staff together to focus on the company's credo. The credo was a list of principles to live by, and including, I quote, a higher duty to mothers and all others who use our products. So this credo, with its emphasis upon higher duty, was the company's script. This is what they were to follow. But was it still being followed? And was there a danger of contradicting scripts taking over? So challenging the company's leaders, he exclaimed, if we're not going to live by the credo, well, let's tear it off the wall. But then after much discussion, everybody, all of his leaders, decided to resuscitate the credo. And it was so good that they did. For as the story goes, 3 years later, the news reported that people were being poisoned by Tylenol capsules in Chicago. But without hesitating, in accordance with the credo's emphasis upon a higher duty, all bottles of Tylenol were removed from store shelves everywhere. In so doing, the company took a $100 million loss, but kept their reputation because of their prompt response. And I love this tidbit from the story in the Atlantic magazine where it says that Burke, in fact, this leader, was on a plane when news of the poisoning broke. And by the time the plane landed, employees were already ordering Tylenol off store shelves. The point being illustrated is that by anticipating problems, by being aware of a possible shadow or dark side of things, problems were averted. Now, the contrast is the case of the Challenger space shuttle disaster, where problems were not anticipated, the shadow was ignored. The pressuring script, there was enormous pressure from the leadership at NASA to launch the Space Shuttle Challenger on time. And as problems came up, and they did, each problem was ignored. The consequence? The Challenger exploded several seconds after liftoff. So is it all good? No, not all of it. Some of it, yes. The point is to have a vision. You bet. Have a vision, have a dream. But be aware of the dark side. Be aware of the shadow side. Be ever so aware.